Hello and welcome to TS Library's video on how to use EndNote with a Mac. This class is an introductory class and takes about 30 or 40 minutes. And in that class, we'll show you the very basics you'll need to get going with EndNote on your Mac. So we touch on how to download the software. Then we move on to looking at the layout of the software, a brief description of what it does, how to put references into EndNote, and then how to get references from EndNote into Word in various referencing styles. And along the way, we'll touch on some other things too. But why don't we just dip into it right now? So the first thing I'm going to do is share my screen, and then you'll see a little bit less of me. Open up the internet here. Okay. So this class does not actually take you through step-by-step everything to do with downloading the software, but I will show you where to get it from and instructions on how to download it, and so hopefully you'll be okay. The software lives from the library's homepage in the referencing area, which you can see down here on the right of screen. If I click there, inside this table of options is the page for EndNote. And if I click there, the top leftmost option here is the option to download EndNote to your computer, because EndNote is a downloadable piece of software, which makes it a little bit different from other referencing softwares like RefWorks and Zotero, in that they run basically off a web server, but this one actually downloads software to your computer. So to get it onto your computer, you get to this download EndNote page, acknowledge the terms and conditions, and then if you're a Mac user, you'll be using this little accordion here. Scroll down a little bit. This link takes you to the software that you can then put on your computer, and this bit of text down here tells you how to install the software. But basically, it installs like any other piece of software. You run the install wizard, and then all of a sudden it becomes an option in your applications folder. Okay, so hopefully you'll be okay with that. If not, do ask a librarian about how to do it. Once you've installed EndNote and it becomes an application on your computer, you'll be able to run it. And when you do, you'll see these tabs appear at the top of the screen. The very first time you run it, you may not see anything else, and that's because you haven't made a library yet. So let's make a library. To make a library, go to File, choose New, and give your library a name. I'm going to call mine Dave 2020. Okie dokie. And then when I press Save, I don't really want it in my downloads, I might put it in my Documents folder. And then when I press Save, we see EndNote. Although you may not see EndNote at this time, I might need to switch it so that you do. Here we go. So hopefully you're seeing EndNote now. If I make it just a little bit bigger here, that might be a little bit easier for you. Okay, so hopefully you're still seeing EndNote. Let me just describe what we're seeing here today. Basically, forgive me while I just look off screen here for a second and adjust something on my other computer. What we're seeing here are three main windows. The leftmost one is like a filing system for your references. The middle one here is where your references go. And the rightmost two here are to do with the way your reference will look according to the favorite style of referencing that you've selected. This window will be about all of the information to do with your reference, so like who wrote it and what it's called and when it was written. And all of this information, once it appears, is editable. And then this information on the right of screen, this window on the right of screen, is like a PDF viewer. So if you've attached a PDF file to a reference, you'll be able to access the PDF from here and read it and annotate it as well. Now, here I am describing the layout of the EndNote software, but I don't think I've actually described what the EndNote software is and does. So let me just very quickly round back to that. EndNote is a referencing management software. So its job is to perform two functions, in a sense. it's there to create a library of references, the things you've read, the things you've looked at, and the things you want to talk about in your work. And it keeps all of the referencing information about those things in the one place. And if you've attached files to those references, also can keep the actual documents that match those references in the one place. And that makes for a nice workflow for you if you want to keep track of all the things you've read and also get back to those documents in some cases. Then you can do all of that under the EndNote roof. But the second and probably most important thing that EndNote does is that it can take these references, style them according to different referencing styles, numbered styles, author date styles, all kinds of referencing styles. And it can place them into your word processor for you. Now, it works best with Microsoft Word, but it also does work with other things like Pages and Google Documents. But we will demonstrate it with Microsoft Word today. So that's what it does. And it does a pretty good job of it. So hopefully we can convince you of that here with the rest of the class. So now that we sort of know what EndNote does and what the various aspects of this screen are for, why don't we go and put some references in here so we can show you how it works properly. So as I said before, I think there's two ways you can put a reference into EndNote. You can download it off the internet, and this works well with library type products, the library catalog, library databases, Google Scholar. Or for things like general websites, things you might find in Google, you have to key in the bibliographic information about them, so what they're called and who wrote them and those sorts of things. You key those into EndNote manually, and while that might sound like a bit of a labor-intensive task, it still probably is a worthwhile thing to do, because once you've created a reference in EndNote, you can deploy it into your writing very easily, and the reference will last forever and can be reused again and again with very little hassle. So let me now share again, and I will go back to the internet to show you how to get a book reference and a journal article reference from out of the library's catalogue. Here we are, the library catalogue. Well, the library homepage. From here, I can search the library catalogue, which is this box up here. The library catalogue, since it got updated in the summer of 2019-20, can be used to find books or articles with the same search interface. So I'll find both. I might start with a book to bring up books at the top of my search. I might choose a nice big broad subject, cosmology. I like to do spacey examples when I run these classes face to face. So here it's done some thinking, and what we have at the top here are a couple of books all called cosmology, and one of these will be fine for me. So if I click on the name of this book, a page opens up with lots of different options on it, including all of these buttons here at the top. One of these buttons, Export RIS, will send the bibliographic information about this book to EndNote. So it's a pretty simple process once you know what to look for. This RIS file type is compatible with EndNote. So you click this, and then you click this download button. And you can see something bouncing into my downloads folder. Now, if I go in there, you'll see it there, primoexport.ris. Now, if you click on that and you've just started using EndNote, what it will probably say to you is, what software would you like to open this file with? And at that point, you can choose EndNote. However, every time you click on this RIS file, it will ask you that question, and it becomes a laborious thing to keep telling it, I want to use EndNote. So to avoid that, you can actually train your Mac to open files with EndNote automatically. So let me show you how to do that now. I might have to share my screen again. Okay, so here is my Finder in Mac. If I right click on this file that I've just downloaded, you'll see an option here called Get Info, and this will help us select EndNote as the software to always open these kind of files with. So I'm not sure exactly how this works. Maybe I have to share one more time again. Here we go. So when I choose Get Info, this is what you see. And you'll notice this may be collapsed when you begin. But one of the options within this get info window is open with. So if I select open with, it opens up, and I have already set up my Mac to open files with EndNote, RAS files with EndNote. But if you were starting from scratch, you wouldn't see this. You would just see App Store and Other from this drop-down menu. And to get this working, you would choose Other. Now I have to share again and choose, I believe, this window. Okay, so from within this window here, you would go and find EndNote, and then you would select this sort of executable file for EndNote from within the EndNote folder. And then you would click this little button that says always open with, and then you would press add. Okay, now I have to share my screen one more time to go and find this little fellow one more time. Okay. So now EndNote X9 should be in this little window here, and then the final thing to do is press change all and continue. Right. What that means is, if I now go back to my downloads folder, when I double click on this file here, you can see over in EndNote that the references appear. So this is it here, cosmology. If I click on it with my left mouse button, it goes blue. And what happens then is this information on the right starts to populate itself. So you can see here that the author is this person, the year, the title, all this information has come in. And then down here, we have a preview of what the reference would look like in our reference list. Now, my reference style, favorite reference style at the moment is the APA 7th with a hanging indent. This is actually a version of the APA 7th referencing style that the UTS library folks have tweaked a little bit to improve it. And one of the improvements we made is to put a hanging indent into it. This does not come as a default with EndNote. It's a style that I've downloaded into EndNote. Some of the default styles that will be there at the start will be things like annotated and author date. But if you wanted to add a style to EndNote, then you can do that. And most of the styles that are common to UTS, that is to say APA 7th, Harvard UTS, and AGLC 4th, are all downloadable from the library's website. So let me go back to the internet here, and I will show you where to get them. Okay, so if I just close this cosmology page real quick, and then go back over to the EndNote page. Here we go. I probably should have done this before I started downloading, but that's okay. If you want to download the referencing styles like APA, Harvard, and AGLC 4th, you can go to this page here within the EndNote page, which is within the referencing page, which is findable from the library homepage. So you get to this page and then you choose download referencing styles. And then we have some information here on how you download and set up either APA 7th or Harvard UTS, or if you're a law student, how you would set up the AGLC 4th. And that's a sort of two-step process, which we won't go into today. But basically, I can demo how it works. You would click on the style and it'll download something to your computer. Then if you were to go to the Finder window, I have to keep sharing a different screen to do this, which is a bit of a drag. But here you can see the style that's come down. So you double click that. And then if you go to EndNote, you'll see this window. And basically what you do, you can't quite see it right now because you can only see this little window, but you do go up to the top of the screen where your EndNote tabs are and choose File, Save As. Give it a name, APA 7th UTS, for example, and press Save. Then you can close this window. Now that I've done that, you'll be able to choose APA 7th UTS as one of your favorite styles. The way that works is you go down to this little favorites window here and you choose select another style. And you can see I've got many different versions of APA 7th in here, but the one I just downloaded was this one, APA 7th _ UTS. So you click on the one that you've downloaded and press choose, and then it is your favorite. And you can see when I click on this that you get a version of a book reference over here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to the library catalog one more time. I'm going to grab a journal article this time, and I'm going to attach a PDF of that journal article to the reference, and then we will have a look at the references and see if there's anything about them we might want to edit. So first thing to do is to go back to the library website. And I'm going to use the catalog option, which is always at the top here, to look up something a bit more specific within the field of cosmology or astronomy. Wolf-Rayet star. Okay, so this is basically the same process we did use already for a book, but now we're going to grab a journal article. And as I say, one of the advantages of a journal article is they usually have PDF attachments, well, they have PDF versions of the actual article, and you can attach them to your library. So we'll do those things now. We'll grab the reference and then we'll grab the PDF. So if I click the name of the article, then I go over to the Export RAS button and download it. It bounces into my little Finder window here. And when I double click that and then reveal my EndNote, you'll see that it's come into our library. And lots of information has actually come along into this, including the abstract and keywords and all other kinds of cool things. So, pardon me, what I'm going to do now is go back to the internet and follow the catalog page through to the PDF for this article and then attach it. So if I return to the internet and then I go down and follow one of these full text links, I should be able to grab the PDF. Okay, so here is the PDF of the article in question. And when I get to it, what you need to do if you want to attach a PDF to a reference in EndNote is download it to your computer, and then you can sort of attach it in the way you would attach a file to an email. So, pardon me, if I click this download button, download the document to my computer. Okay, so what I now need to do is go back to EndNote, and this file is called j.something something. I'm going to find it in my computer and attach it, and hopefully it'll look all right in this way of screencasting. So back to EndNote. Here is my reference. Now, I can actually right click on this reference and it brings up all kinds of options to do with the reference, one of which is file attachment. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to right click on the reference, choose file attachments, and then attach a file. And again, I'm not sure if you can see this unless I make you see it. If I go back to my Finder, here is the actual PDF in question. So I'm going to attach that. Okay, so this may look a bit odd for a second because I'm not sure if I can do everything I need to do. But hopefully what the main thrust of what I was trying to do here has come across, which is that after right clicking and then sort of finding the file on my computer, it's now appeared over here as an attachment. And as soon as I click away from the reference in this sort of stripy area here, if I click anywhere other than on that text, it will say, do you want to save? So if I press save, now there's a little paperclip beside this icon. And if I click on it, you can see that over here on the right, we have a PDF. Too small to read, I grant you, but it's there. So if you did want to see the PDF, you can press this Open PDF button, and basically this brings up a preview of the reference itself, like this. And there are some annotation functions in here to make sticky notes and to highlight text and all those other cool things. And if you do all of that, all of those annotations and changes will be saved to this PDF when you look at it the next time in EndNote. Okay, so a lot of share screening has to go on in this class. Okay, so now I'm back to EndNote. I have an attachment and I've briefly showed you how to annotate it. Okay, so we've downloaded 2 references today, but only one of them can be seen now in this reference area here, and you might be wondering where the other one has gone. Good question. The answer is revealed over here on the left. So we have, what we're looking at here is our imported references folder, and whichever one was the most recently downloaded, that's the one that we'll be looking at. However, if you look just above that, you'll see this all references area with 2 references. So if I click there, we'll see our spectral study, and we'll also see cosmology. So you'll notice that there's nothing in any of these windows unless I click on one of the references. And when I do, you'll see things pertinent to those references. You might be wondering why one of them is bold and one of them's not. This is not a very important thing, but if you double click on a reference and send it into edit mode, you may not be able to see this window, but basically, as soon as you've put it into edit mode, when you're in edit mode, you just see like a big blown up version of what's in this window here. And then as soon as you leave that mode again, it's changed the status from bold, which means unread, to gray, which is read. Now it doesn't actually know whether you've read the article or not. It just considers you double clicking on it to make it go into edit mode as reading it. So that's all the bold means. Okay, so another good thing to do when you're downloading references off the internet is just to vet them really quickly to see if they look nice as references, because sometimes the data that comes off the internet is incomplete, and sometimes it's actually even too detailed or too complete. And so we'll see if either of those things have happened today. I'm looking first at my article. It does help to know a little bit about the referencing style you're working with when you're using any piece of referencing software like EndNote, because it will allow you to notice things about the reference that don't seem right. This is why we don't really recommend first year students use referencing software, because it's better to master the principles of referencing without the software before you start to move into this field, because it'll make your work of a higher quality. In any event, let me have a look at this reference. So we have the authors and they look nice. We have the date of publication and it looks fine. We have the title of the article, which is fine too, sentence case. Then we have the name of the journal in italics, which is good. The volume and issue number, the page range, and the DOI. This is actually a perfectly nice reference. What I could do, if I scroll through this sort of edit mode here, if you wanted to, you can use this research notes field to add things that might help you make sense of this reference again later on. So you might want to pull some quotes out of an article and paste them there. You might want to just leave some notes for yourself about aspects of the article you're interested in, or ways in which you might want to use the article in your work. Anything that helps you remember and make sense of the document. You can put all that text in the research notes field if you want. There are many more fields here than you could ever use as well. It's important to note. So don't feel like you need to fill them all in. Generally, you only need to fill in 4 to 6 fields within any given reference to make a nice reference. And you can see that in this case, all the information you needed to make a nice one came automatically, and you don't need to add to that. For the book, we have Liebscher DE with this hyphen here, which might look a bit odd, but when you go up, you'll see that this person has a double barrel first name, and so that's actually the way it would look. You've got a year, a title, some information about the edition, the publisher, and then the DOI number. Now, there are a couple of little things about this you could do to make it perfect in APA 7th style. The first thing I notice is that we have like this information about an edition here that we probably don't need because it's a first edition book. And generally for a first edition book, you don't include the edition number in the reference, even though this is the right place to be mentioning, you know, an edition. It would need to be the second or the third edition, etc., to actually need to be put in here. So what I can do is go down to the edition field and just remove this text. So, oh, I'm having awful lot of trouble doing that, aren't I? Maybe I need to go into, I wouldn't normally have to do this, but it might be because of the way I'm screen sharing. It's not going to really play along here. So what I'll do is I'll go into edit mode and then I'll share this screen with you. Okay, great. So if I go down to here to this edit mode, getting very odd now. All right, it's not going to work, is it? Alrighty. I don't really want to have to shoot this whole video again. So what I'll do, I did manage to delete it while I wasn't in the share screen mode. But I mean, if in your real life, this would be very easy. You would just click in there where the cursor is now flashing and just delete everything. So hopefully you can bear with me about that. When I click out of there, it again says, do you want to save? And now if I go back and look at this reference, you can see that the information is gone. I think technically, oh, it's going to let me edit it again now, which is nice. I think technically also for a DOI in the APA 7 style, you would actually express it like this, https doi.org. So, you know, this is unlikely to probably cause you huge problems, but if you do know these sort of details, you can reflect them in your reference. So if I go out there and I press save, and then I go back and look at this, you can see that the DOI is even better than it was before. Cool. So now we have two references. What I'll do really quickly is just show you the internet one more time. And I will go to Google Scholar. So Google Scholar and other databases that the library subscribes to can be used to export references to EndNote. So if I go and search for Wolf Ray Star here, the way you would do that is underneath any given reference in Google Scholar is this sort of cite button, double quote button. And from within there, you can choose EndNote or RefMan, RefMan being an RIS file, and EndNote being a slightly different file that does the same thing that Google makes. Either of those will work, although if you've already turned your computer, made your Mac aware of what to do with an RIS file, then you'll save having to repeat the process for this EndNote type file by going and clicking on this one. And it tends to be better quality data as well. Sometimes if you download the EndNote one, the fields get jumbled up and it's not very good. So if you want to do it the Google Scholar way, click RefMan. Something will go into your downloads window. Here it is, Scholar RIS, double click on that. And then, hey presto, your Google Scholar derived reference is in your library too. And this one, when just on a quick glance, is fine. It's missing a DOI number. Not every article has one though, so that could be a perfectly adequate reference. And the rules about APA, just incidentally, is that, you know, if you've got a DOI number, put it in, but if you don't, you can leave it out and that's fine too. So that reference is probably great. Now, if I go over and click all references again, we see all three of our references. The only one we haven't double clicked on is the one that's in bold. Okie dokie. So that's all good. What we want to do now is to create a reference by hand, manually. This happens most frequently with websites because Google, regular websites that you find, has no button like we saw in the catalog or in Google Scholar. So you're put in a position where you have to key the reference in yourself. Now, this may sound like a bit of a time-consuming thing, but it's still worth doing, because once it's keyed in once, you never have to worry about it again. You can just press a button on your mouse and throw that reference into whatever document you like. And because of EndNote's cleverness, it can even, you know, express that reference in lots of different referencing styles. And we'll show you that in a little bit. But first thing I guess we have to do is find a web page, and then we'll go and use it to key in the information into EndNote. So if I go back to Safari here, I've brought up a page that I often use in class. It's got nothing to do with astronomy or cosmology, but it does make for a nice example of a web page and how to create a web page reference in EndNote. So basically what we have up here are all the things within a very small area that we would need to make a website reference in APA, or Harvard UTS for that matter. We've got the name of the author, the year that the page was last updated, the name of the page, the name of the website, and the URL. So with those things in mind, what I'm going to do is go back over to EndNote and start to key them in. Now this could be a bit cumbersome because of the way that the screen has to be shared, but there's just not much I can do about that, unfortunately. So I'm just grabbing the URL of this page. I can remember everything else. Okay, so if I go back to EndNote, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a new reference. So not that one. If I go over to this icon here, new reference, this will give us a blank page that we can use to manually enter in our stuff. So this is what the blank page looks like. First thing I'm going to do, I was cutting and pasting the URL in the background while I was chatting. So what I'm going to do first off is just paste that URL in there. And to save you trouble of me having to jump back and forward through all these screens, I will just recite from memory all the info about this. So Saul McLeod was the author. This is the way you would write an author in EndNote. You write the surname, then a comma, and then the first name. The year that it was last updated was 2020, and I think it was March 20 of that year. And in APA, if you have a web page with a certain edited date, like March 20, you can put that into the year. Some reference types, some referencing styles, you don't need to do that, in which case you just put the year, and that's fine. Okay, oh, there's one thing I forgot to do here, only human, and that is what we're looking at here. The data that we're entering here is data that would be used to describe a journal article, but that's not exactly going to work. It's not going to make a very nice reference for us if we want to describe a website. So what we need to do before we finish this off is to use this drop down to choose web page. And I'm not sure if you saw that list appear then when I used this drop down, but there's basically a whole bunch of different reference types in there. And the very bottom one is web page. And when I do that, when I choose web page, it does change the fields around here a little bit. And it will also change the way the reference works. The name of the title in this case equates to the name of the web page, which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's in sentence case, which means that you don't capitalize all the words. Publisher in this case refers to the name of the website, which is in what's called title case, which means you do capitalize all of the words or all of the big words over 3 letters. So that's simply psychology. And that's about it for a APA reference. If you had Harvard UTS, you would be doing the access year and date, but we don't need that. So that's that. Before I leave this page though, I'll just tell you how to enter in multiple authors and also corporate authors. So if you had more than one author, in this case we only have one, but if for argument's sake you had more than one, you would enter them on the new line. So here's me, David. You don't actually have to write out their first name in full, because the software, when it goes into the APA style anyway, will abbreviate their names. But there's nothing wrong with writing the full name down. Some referencing styles will actually reproduce the full name. And a new line for every new author. But if you want to enter in a corporate author, like the Department of Finance or something, it's important to note to put a comma after the name of this corporate author, because otherwise EndNote will become confused and try and turn the Department of Finance into like a human being's name. So it will be called sort of Finance TDO thinking that those first three words are the first names of someone whose last name is Finance. So that's what you would have to do to make a corporate author look nice. And that's what you would have to do if you had more than one author. Now that I've told you that, I can delete all this text though, because we don't actually have three authors in this case. So I'm just going to remove it back so it's just one line. And then I'm going to press this red button, at which point it will ask me, do you want to save? Great. And now we have a fourth reference, which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if I go down here and have a look, McLeod S, 2020, March 20, Maslow's hierarchy of needs from Simply Psychology, and the URL. Great stuff. Okie dokie. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a folder, put my spacey kind of references into that folder, and then I'm going to start working with Word. And that will take us to the end of the class. So first thing to do, how to make a group. Well, I guess first thing to do is to tell you what a group is. A group is like a sub file within your big EndNote library that you can use for various reasons. So generally what we advise is for you not to have lots of EndNote libraries per se. So this Dave 2020 thing here is my EndNote library. You shouldn't probably need lots and lots of libraries because the library can be very large and have lots of references. And also, if you start to work with multiple libraries, it can be a problem if you start using them in the same document. So generally, it's simplest to have one library, but to divide up many references within that one library into groups. And these groups could be for whatever reason you like. You could have a group for a certain subject you were doing, or a certain assignment, or a theme that you were doing, like a theme that was a part of your research, say if you were doing a PhD or something like that. Okay, so basically to make a group for whatever reason you might want to do it, you right click here where it says My Groups and you create a group. Now you'll notice there's other kinds of groups that you can create there, but for the purposes of this introductory lesson, we'll just make a simple group. So if you choose Create Group and you give it a name, I'll call mine Space, even though it's not a very technical term, because I have 3 space references and 1 non-space reference. Just press enter. And now I have this group. So there's a couple of different ways you can put a reference into a group. You can click on it and you can drag it in there like so. You can see now I have 1 reference in my space group. Or you can go and select more than one like this with Shift or Control. And then you can right click after having selected them and use this option, Add References To, and you can see my space group there. Both of them work. Now you can see that I have 3 references, and if I click on this group, you'll only see the 3 that have been assigned. Okay. So, but you will always have a folder up here called All References, and that will always have everything. So your 3 space references are in All References, but they're also here too. Okay. If for some reason you didn't want a reference anymore, like this one I got off Google Scholar, you can just press Delete and it will go into your trash. Okay. It will also take it out of the group. You'll also notice here there's an unfiled option, and the unfiled one is our Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That just means we haven't put it in a group. Okay. So hopefully all of that makes sense. Right. Well, now I have 3 references. Why don't I show you how to put them into a word processor, in this case, Microsoft Word. So new share. Here we go. Microsoft Word. So one of the cool things about EndNote is when you download it, it automatically will want to install, if you have Word, a toolbar in Word. And here it is. If I click on EndNote X9 at the top of my Word here, and this is Word 2016, you can see the toolbar. And basically, the way it works is like this. If I start to write an assignment and then I want to reference something, this toolbar will allow me to do that. I can go up here and I can use this little magnifying glass and click on it. And it will bring up a window. Now I may need to go and show you this window. Maybe I'll do it like this. Yeah, So let me just clear this for the moment. So basically this is the window that pops up when you click the little magnifying glass that says insert citation. What you do at this point is you put in a word that describes one of the references you want to enter. So if I write cosmology, for example, it will find any reference that matches that, and it can find this word anywhere inside the reference. So it could be in research notes, it could be in the title, it could be anywhere. As long as it finds it, you're good. And so you click this, click on it so it goes blue with your left mouse button, and then press insert. And going back to Word, we can see what it's done. So it goes according to whatever your favorite style is up here, and does an in-text reference and a reference list. It puts the reference list at the end of the document, but our document is merely one line long. So that's where the reference list is going. It's just one line below that. If you had 10 pages of text and you started to insert references, this reference list down here would appear on page 10. Now, let's just repeat that one more time. If I go up here and I look for my Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for example, I would write something to the effect of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then I would insert that one. Forgive me for bouncing around all these screens. There's not much I can do about it, but unfortunately with Zoom. Here we go. So now we have 2 references, and that's what the in-text reference looks like for that particular reference. One of the cool things about EndNote is its ability to change styles very rapidly. So whatever favorite styles I have will also, in EndNote, will also be accessible from this menu here. So if I was publishing, for example, and then I wanted to publish in a journal that used Vancouver style, I would click this and you can see that the in-text references turn into numbers, and then the reference list turns into a numbered reference list, which is kind of cool, and changes around the fields. Similarly, I can go back to APA 7th and it will go back to the way it was before. So that's a very powerful function. There isn't a whole lot else to mention about this process because it is quite intuitive, other than adding page numbers to a quote if that's pertinent to you, and also messing with this in-text citation so that you remove the author. And I'll show you both of those things now. So let's just say that when we were talking about cosmology, we had a quote from the book. And the quote was from page 7. What we would need to do to add that quote page number to this in-text reference is to click on it. So it goes grey, that is to say, click on the in-text reference. And then go up to this button that says Edit and Manage Citations. Then, after various button clicking on my part, you will arrive at this screen. This is the Edit and Manage Citations window for that in-text reference, Liebscher. Now, in here, you can go and write the page number of your quote, 7, and then press OK. Then, eventually, when we go back here, you'll see that the page number has been added to the in-text reference. Now, the reason we do it that way is because you'll notice that when you click on these references, they go grey. That's because they're formatted with EndNote's codings, which allows it to flip from one referencing style to another if you want to. But because of that coding, it doesn't really want you writing stuff in there. It rejects it. You can see it going away again. So that's why we need to use this Edit and Manage Citation button to make these sorts of changes. So I guess the other thing, that could have happened that's pretty common that we cover in the introductory class is if you're sort of doing, I guess, what's called the author prominent form of citation, where you're saying Maslow, or actually MacLeod describes blah, blah, blah. When you've done this sort of writing in your essay, you don't now need the MacLeod in the in-text citation. You've already used their name. So what you can do as well is use this Edit and Manage Citation button to manage that. So I'm going to click on it, make it go grey, click this button, do a bit of zoom work, so you can see the window. And as with before, we put a page number in to indicate a page number. This time, what we're going to do is use this drop down to exclude information from the in-text reference that it's created. In this case, the author. Once I've done that, and go back to Word, you will see that now McLeod has disappeared from this in-text reference. And there's a couple of different things you can do in that regard. You can make it go author in brackets date. You can remove the in-text citation altogether. You can remove the year and do all kinds of cool things like that. But that is basically everything that is involved with the introduction to EndNote class. So at this point in time, I guess what I need to do is wrap up. Now, there is one more thing I guess I can show you. What if I do this? Okay, no, I'll do it over here. So if I delete all of this text, actually, if I undelete all of this text, I'll show you this. This is going to be good. One of the problems, I guess, with this EndNote coding where it goes gray is that you might have a reference list at the end of doing everything, and you notice there's something a little bit weird about it and you'd like to change it, but because of the way it goes gray like this, it's very difficult to make the changes from the Word side. You would have to go over to EndNote and change it in the EndNote side before it will be able to sort of reflect the accurate way of referencing over here. Sometimes that can be hard to do. So one thing you can do at the end of your assignment, when you're happy with what EndNote has done, but then you want to edit the document in various ways without EndNote getting in the way anymore, is you can use this little tools drop down to convert the document to plain text. This will make a completely new version of your document, but all of this coding will be gone, and then you can just edit the text as you would your own text, and that can be good. So something to be aware of. The other thing I guess I was going to show you, and I will show you, is just making a reference list using EndNote rather than you doing the in-text referencing and the reference list at the same time. This can be useful. So if I just quickly flip over to EndNote, if you just want a plain text reference list, you can grab whatever references you like. I'll just grab them all. Right click and choose copy formatted. And then whatever referencing style is your favorite at that time, it will copy these references in text that is in that style. So now if I go back over to Word and paste, I just get a reference list, but it's plain text. So if I wanted to fiddle around with that, I could do so very easily. Like for example here, there looks like, oh yeah. So this one is missing the HTTPS DOI thing, right? So I could just go and add it in now if I wanted to. And it won't put up any fuss. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so that is basically it for this class. What I'll do is just go back right to the start here, go to the library's website and just indicate to you that if you have a question about EndNote, there is the Ask a Librarian function here on the library's homepage, which contains our chat and our email service. There is also, within the referencing page, lots of information about EndNote, guides on how to use EndNote, PDFs, with screenshots about how to use EndNote, both Mac and PC. But there's also the referencing team down here, which includes me and other people too. And you can contact the folks from this team if you like as well for help with your EndNote problems. So thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry about how much juggling of screens I had to do for this class, but hopefully it's been usable for you. See you again down the line.